think ESG is the biggest boardroom topic currently. It's quite interesting. In the last sort of 5 years, it's gone from something that would typically be covered under AOB at a board meeting into something that's front and centre of the agenda of probably every board meeting. And I think it's purely because, if you look at the environmental issues, I think they're top of mind for consumers across the world. And I think companies have realised that they have such an important part to play. And a number of them have access to assets and resources that can help with the various challenges. And I also think that a lot of companies now do have strategies that's very much around doing the right thing. And a number of reasons for that. One of them is because I think that certainly in my company, what we noticed with the pandemic, we did a lot of assistance for the government in the response to the pandemic, and I actually noticed what a galvanizing effect it had on my colleagues and teams, because they felt they were doing the right thing and they were making their contribution to help. So I think the realization of how much goodwill comes from doing the right thing, I think, is something that's really come to the fore in business in the last few years. I think companies should do more to support their local communities and charities because of the galvanizing effect it has on their colleagues. So actually, rather than just focus on the traditional sort of measures of companies like profit, share price, etc., to actually feel that they're giving back. And I think that companies actually should do more of it. Actually, I think it's the right thing to do. And I quite like a lot of big companies now actually have realised it's the right thing to do and are putting a lot of focus on it, as my company, MasterCard, has, definitely. I also think there's a thing about, employees, if you can make staff and employees proud of where they work, I actually think you get more from them and you get a higher performance level. And as such, it's a kind of win-win. So they feel as if they're contributing to their community or charity, whatever it is. And also they feel proud of their employer for actually helping them, giving them that opportunity, as it were. And I just think it's a win-win. I'm a great believer in that people perform at their best when they enjoy doing something and having pride in doing something. And I think if you can provide a platform to do that, I think it's very powerful. I think giving back is so important for exactly the reason of what a customer's impression is of a company. I think that often, rightly or wrongly, in many cases wrongly, I think companies have been perceived as making a lot of money, making high profits, and not actually giving anything back to the local communities. And I actually think that the strategy of being closer to local communities and being seen to give back and participate in local issues and help with local issues, I think actually helps companies establish far more customer loyalty and also differentiate themselves on occasion. So I think that's why it's important. I think one of the biggest drivers for it is because of the change in retail behaviour, where a lot less people go out to the high streets with cash in their pockets and change ready to put in the buckets to collect money for charities. And I know, lots of charities have suffered huge reductions in income just because of people's change in behaviour. And I actually think the consumers actually are still keen to make donations, but sometimes the infrastructure, because of not being carrying cash, hasn't been there to do it. So I think that's why micro donations movement is so important to replace that, the ability to make a donation using cash. I also think that people actually feel good about making donations, no matter how small they are, because they know that anything that's donated is actually of benefit. So I think if you can make a donation that's, perhaps smaller than traditional, but still be made to feel as if you're making a difference, then I think it makes people feel good about themselves. And I think micro donations does that very well. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember visiting India on business probably 4 years ago, maybe, and we went as part of the work MasterCard does. We went to a local school where the MasterCard had donated some technology and stuff, and we got very close to the kids and chatted to the kids, and it quite affected me, and it sort of made me personally reflect on what I could do more to give back. And I was kind of looking around for an opportunity to do that, because obviously, I don't have huge amounts of time. So when Pennies came up, I thought that's perfect, because it actually plays to my skill set to an extent, and hopefully it's an area I can make a little bit of difference to it. And then when I met the team, particularly Alison, I was blown away with how successful they had been with so little resource, if you like, to use, that it just made me want to help. And to this day, I still regularly rack my brains and think, what more could I be doing to help? Because I think it's fantastic what's been achieved. I also quite like the fact that they support quite a wide range of organisations, charities, right, from large ones right through to local community ones. I think that's a really nice model. So that attracts me as well. I actually personally believe the biggest opportunity is in either direct debit, so tapping into direct debit, or variable recurring payments that will come out through open banking. So I think both of them are areas that I think consumers would happily top up both of these payments without even thinking about it. I also think the opportunity for Pennies is to support the move from companies offering micro donations as an exception or as a differentiator to actually making micro donations become de facto. So companies who don't offer it are behind, if you like, to be something there. There's over 3 billion direct debits, well over 3 billion, it might even be as much as 4 per year in the UK. And if you could just get someone, when they're signing a new direct debit mandate, say, do you agree to give to top up to the nearest pound or nearest 10 pence or whatever it is, you could give a range of options, and I think you're on there's huge potential for it. I think most of them we've covered. I think employee engagement. I think if you could go to your employees and say, in this area, why don't you vote on what charity you want to support or which local community initiative or whatever it is, I think you get real buy-in. So I think that's a benefit. And I also think that customers will be more loyal if they feel they're giving something back. I think in the pandemic, I think with things like Major Tom, I believe that people are now far more focused on how they can help. So I think companies offering that as a service is is something that they would see that as a way to help. I'd probably say this joining Pennies ticks all the boxes in terms of what your corporate strategy, or many of the boxes your corporate strategy needs to contain around ESG. And it also gives you the opportunity to have a very engaged workforce. And actually, I could be wrong in this, but I don't know many businesses who've joined Pennies and come out of Pennies again. So I think that there's no looking back, and I think the companies, I was at the recent event Pennies held, and I was quite struck by the feedback from companies who joined the movement. So I think that's very, very powerful. In terms of consumers looking to make the choice, I think it's a continual education that every penny counts and every donation makes a positive impact. And you shouldn't underestimate it. If you give a small amount every time you make a transaction, you shouldn't underestimate the amount it all adds up. And so don't have a mindset that it's not worth bothering because it's too small. That would be my message.